Communication Air.
What's up, brother? It's episode 50 of the Communication Air podcast. The Community Patch Notes episode. Tuesday. It's not Tuesday. Well, unless you're a patron, you might be listening on Tuesday. Special teams, special players, special plays. All right. Anyway, it is the episode 50 of the Communication Air podcast. It's the Community Patch Notes episode of Should Games Have Difficulty Settings? But episode 50, that's big. That's huge.
We made it. And to come along with us on this journey, what does Nintendvania say? Like, to help us on this journey or something? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. we have ClockworthClone. I don't know. Do you want to be called ClockworthClone, or do you want to be called Mitchell?
You can just call me Mitchell. It's fine. I think when I originally was making TikToks, there was like a brief period where I was like, okay, I'm going to go all in on the brand. But at this point, it's more like a username than it is an identity.
Yeah, I've always wondered, what is ClockworthClone? Like, how did you come up with that?
It's going to be I'm going to try to make this story short. Well, it's not really that long. It's a dumb story, though. So my original username on a lot of platforms was TC Clockworth. And that whole origin completely comes from a dumb conversation I had with some friends in high school where we were trying to make up really fake, dumb, rich person sounding names for each other. And I only used it as a username because it was never taken on anything because it was so dumb. And then the ClockworthClone comes into play because I created a duplicate Twitch account at one point so that I could attach it to my mom's Amazon Prime and give Prime subs to people. And that eventually became my main username because I got locked out of my original Twitter account. So at that point, I was like, well, I'll just be ClockworthClone on everything since I'm not on Twitter now as well.
Well, it works. I thought it was some JRPG thing, honestly.
Yeah, I thought so too.
The clone has kind of started to reference Mewtwo, but like that's as close as it gets.
Well, thanks for being on. Yeah. We met through TikTok. That's how we meet a lot of people. That's how we met a lot of people. Like TikTok's been like the coolest place. I hope it doesn't get banned.
If you have an Android, you could still sideload the app potentially if it does get banned.
I'll have to get an Android because I have an iPhone. But welcome, and let the people know what you do on the internet.
So now I mostly just kind of tweet stuff when I'm like watching a wrestling show or playing a game or what have you. For a little bit of time, notably I think mostly like in 2021, but on and off since then, I've created TikTok videos. I don't do as much anymore because since I became a teacher, which was my main goal, actually not creating content becoming a teacher was my main goal. I haven't had as much time for it. And also with my ADHD, sometimes I just lose hyper focus on certain things. When I did make videos, it was all about video games, mostly Nintendo. The things of mine that have done the best. One was a very short-lived thing, but it's actually the thing I'm more proud of, which was the Go Lock, which was a Nuzlocke where you transfer all the Pokemon from Pokemon Go. The other things that at one point, I tried to do the end of the last season in December, and they did not do well at all. But at one point in time, like the consistent, reliable thing was the Guess the Video Game videos.
Yeah, the ghost reviews.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are great.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'd also done a version of that called the Switch Log as well. That was like the original one. And then I repurposed it into Ghost Review, so like it didn't have to be limited to the games that I had played on Switch up to that point. So
nice.
So the reason we brought you on is because you tweeted about this. Well, you tweeted about I think playing on easy mode. You've been playing on easy mode, right?
I've got that comment actually. If you want me to read it, or I thought I did. Hold on. It's here somewhere. It's okay. Yeah. You said, I realized this change was made with the intent of normalizing playing games on easy, but I miss when easy wasn't described as for gamers who just want to experience the story. I had no problem being trash at games if I still was tricked into thinking I overcame something. Now when I think about playing a game on easy and read that description, I'm just like, well, why don't I just watch a Let's Play at that point and stubbornly choose normal, even if easy would make me happier. So it's interesting because this is like, we wanted to talk about this topic, and then like that very next day you tweeted something about it, and we were like, perfect. Like, let's get him on the show.
There it is. So I tweeted that because I guess I still am. I haven't given up on it yet. I think I'm about to give up on Dragon Quest Monsters, unfortunately, which bums me out. But I've been playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and I don't know if it's the first boss. It's like the first major boss. It's the one that gatekeeps the second large area you can get to. I was just like struggling with that. And I normally play on normal, and I was thinking like, when I was growing up, I always played on easy, and I didn't think much of it because I was like, I'm still having to overcome some sort of obstacle. Like, I don't really care if I can be like, oh, I beat it on hard, as long as I know that I had to get better at something and like engage with the game in some way, whatever that level is for me. But like now, like every time I go to like, I was like, I think when I tweeted that, I was on the verge of breaking, and I was about to switch back to easy mode, and I saw the description for gamers who just want to focus on the story, and I was like, well, I don't want the game to like win for me. So that may have always been the case, and that's kind of why I tweeted that. Like, they just were like hiding it from us. But I do think it's good that they're normalizing playing games for the story, but like, it's just like a hang up in my own head that I can't get over.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because I wonder, even if you were to choose the easy mode, would it still be like combat heavy, or is it just for the story? Like, is that just an easy way to get people to click on that difficulty setting? Is just like, don't worry, you're more focused on the story, but it still will be fun. Or is it just like, no, you're basically just playing this for the story and that's it?
It probably depends on the game. And I know some games, like I think, Johnny, you mentioned this last week, some will have an easy and a story. And I think in that case, it probably really is just like, you can't die. In the case of this game, I do think you could theoretically die, but I will, and I don't want to speak for anybody because I don't want to be like, but I don't think you ever would. And then somebody be like, well, I did, because then I'd feel like a bad person. But what I will say is I switched it to easy mode, and I like didn't even sweat beating it. But then I felt like I got back in my head about that. I was like, well, that was too easy. And I eventually went back to normal and then got through the grinding, and I did beat it. And as long as I don't have to grind to that level again later on in the game, I think I will probably finish playing it on normal. But it just wasn't a game that I was invested enough in to like experience every little detail and like grind up to the level that would work for me.
Yeah. And I guess it's nice too that like there is an option for you to change the difficulty setting mid-game, and that you're not just locked into it. But Johnny, we completely skipped over.
Yeah, we skipped the main thing we got to do, and I'm pretty confident right now. I'm feeling pretty good based on Mitchell's shirt.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous. But so, go ahead, ask it.
We ask every guest, you know this. Do you prefer Super Mario World or Super Mario Bros. 3?
Super Mario Bros. 3.
Yeah. Every guest this year, and Jeeb can't take it back, right? Jeeb, if you're listening, you can't take it back. It counts.
Yeah, he really screwed me over, man, because he later, for the listeners, he later tweeted us and said, oh, I like Super Mario World better than 3. I just wasn't thinking. And I just, it's one of those.
Jeeb?
Jeeb.
Oh, okay. I was like, no, I didn't say
that. No, not you. But Jeeb. Sense. And then it's like, that is the one with Yoshi. Yoshi doesn't exist in Super Mario Bros. 3. And like, I know that he hasn't really played them, so it's fine. And he says that he is going to play them. But it's like, something's in the water this year, and everybody has chose 3 so far. And
so why do you prefer 3?
So this is where, like, I just am going to be honest with any potential bias. I'm kind of in the same position you were when this whole conversation started on the podcast, Cheesy, in that I grew up playing 3, and I have beaten 3. I had never really interacted with World outside of, like, small snippets. And I will say, I did play it over the weekend as homework for the podcast. And I think I'm right. I think I'm at Roy's Castle. I think the 5th castle. But I think it's one of those things where they're so very similar. And I think which one you prefer for most people, unless you grew up playing both, is going to come down to the one you grew up playing.
Yeah.
But I did grow up playing the All-Stars version, so it's technically on the World's Engine, if that does anything
That's what
for
that's
you.
what I did too. I played it on the All-Stars version. I mean, that's the right answer. 3 is always the right answer. But it's funny when we do this every guest, like, I wonder if people think that I really hate World or like Cheesy hates 3. No, it's like comparing two perfect games. You just can't do it. They're both phenomenal. I love them both, but I just prefer 3 over World.
When I was playing 3, I did not like it, but I am able to appreciate what it is done for gaming and how the level designs work. And again, I think kind of what Clockworth was saying is that, like, I grew up playing World, so to go back to 3, that just feels kind of different and more rushed to me, or like there was something about the controls that I didn't like either. It just didn't feel right compared to World, and that's the one that I grew up with. So I kind of get it. I get what you're saying.
We are close. It is 7-6 right now.
Are you kidding me?
It's 7-6. Yeah.
Because of this year.
Because of this year. Every 2024, I think everybody in 23 said World, and now everybody in 24 has said 3. So,
you just gotta make it to 2025, and then you'll be back on top.
Well, now
we gotta get returning guests, I guess, right?
When did we start this? Was it like when we started the podcast? Because we're almost at a year, so maybe we could flip the question or like start a new question.
Oh, because you don't want to lose.
No. Everybody loves World. Anyway,
that's a good idea. We might think of a new question to ask people because, like you said, we have been doing this for about a year. Maybe people want to hear something else.
Yeah, we'll see. Throw your ideas at us, and maybe they'll be on the show. But that is not the topic. The topic is difficulty. And I don't know about you, Johnny, or Clockworth, but just from last week, I feel like I kind of learned a lot about how people feel about difficulty settings. And it's not at all what I thought it was going to be. I thought more people would want the option of difficulty settings. And it turns out that's really not the case.
I don't know about that.
You don't know about that?
Yeah, no, I don't think that's the case. I'm pretty sure people want the option.
Well, how do you feel, Clockworth?
So, above all, I think it's important to say, and because if this were the only thing we talked about, there would be much of a podcast. But like for a consumer, options are always better, right? Sure. Like nobody's like, maybe there are some people that don't need the option, but if somebody has the option, they're not going to complain about having the option once they get in there and playing the game. The only example they might is in like some sort of gatekeeping scenario where like they don't want someone to enjoy the thing they enjoy, and that opens it up to new players. That being said, I don't think it's like a huge deal for some games to be for some people and some games to be for other people, because there's so many options. Yeah. But if the developers have the time and resources to put in the option, which I feel like a lot of them do, it's just a matter of if they think they're going to get a higher return on their sales like because of that, to like justify it in their mind, then why not?
Yeah. I mean, so we did get we got some novels this week, but I really like what everybody had to say. So I'll start with Flea. It said, regarding your final paragraph, they were talking to somebody else. That's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine. People conflating difficulty with accessibility. Accessibility is stuff like color blindness settings, translation, button mapping, and controller options. Things to make the game playable by a wider audience rather than beatable by a wider audience.
I'm going to interject.
Okay.
I disagree. I think difficulty options are an accessibility feature because it does make it more playable to a wider audience. Not beatable for a wider audience. It makes it more accessible for a wider audience.
I agree and disagree. I agree in the sense that having the option to make it easier will make it more accessible to people that find it difficult to play. But I also think that when people talk about accessibility options in video games, it is important to not combine those two concepts, because the word is also used in the other sense. And I think it's important to have two separate conversations when you're discussing those things. Because when we were talking about like Nintendo and like not having options, or like when you guys were, rather, when I was listening last week, I was kind of listening to that, and what I was thinking to myself was, well, Nintendo sucks at offering like accessibility in the technical sense for like people who are colorblind or so on and so forth. But I feel like in terms of casting a wide net, they're pretty decent.
As far as
like making their games easy enough, or like having challenge options, even if the whole game isn't challenging. Speaking of which, talking about me being bad at video games, I thought that Wonder was the perfect level of challenge for my skill level.
Nice. Yeah. So when you read like the difficulty stars on Wonder, did it match up to what they said it was going to be?
I think for some levels it did and some it didn't, because I think ultimately that's a guessing game for them, right? But I think generally, like, if it was like, you could divide it into low stars and high stars, and I think those were relatively accurate.
Yeah. I mean, I understand. I agree that it is challenging. Like, it is more challenging for certain people, or it's easier for certain people. Like, I've been playing Mario my entire life, so a lot of that stuff, it just comes easy to me. But there's games like, I'm just trying to think of a game that people might find easy and I struggle with. I don't know. I'm good at everything.
Rhythm games, maybe?
Yeah, rhythm games. Yeah, that's a good one. Rhythm games. That's a good one. But I slipped that in there. Nobody, Cheesy caught it. But yeah, no, I get it. But I just, for me personally, I want them to offer a more challenging experience.
Sure. And there's nothing wrong with that.
And I think they do. The thing is that kind of annoys me is you kind of have to slog through the first few worlds to get anything that might make you break a sweat a little bit. But if you could have something like right from the get-go, what I'm thinking of is a New Super Luigi U. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've played that one.
I have not.
So that was more challenging than New Super Mario Bros. U. It was like less time, and I think just the platforming was just more difficult because Luigi, he slides all over the place. So I would like to see something like that. If we could get maybe DLC for Wonder like that, that'd be good.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I want to keep reading Flea's comment just so we're not missing anything that they said. On the subject of difficulty settings, I'm not against games providing difficulty settings if they want, but often the end result is enemies with more health or that do more damage to the player, and that just feels really hollow. But if they want to include these options, it's fine with me. But my stronger opinion is that developers shouldn't feel obligated to include difficulty sliders if that compromises the design of their game. I think every developer should have every right to make their games exactly as difficult or easy as they want to. Dark Souls too hard for you? Get good. Kirby too easy? Maybe the game or the series even is just not for you. If you can't enjoy it for its other virtues because you hate so much that it's too easy, that's on you. If difficulty is so important to you, side note, it is for me, maybe just recognize that maybe it's time to move on from Kirby or try to find other things to like about it, because I really doubt you're going to get a hard Kirby game anytime soon.
This is a very directed comment. It doesn't say, Johnny, if you think Kirby's too good, it's not for you. Johnny,
it definitely was a subtweet. Yeah,
that's a sub comment right there.
That's kind of what I was saying to you last week. It's like not every game has to be for you.
Yes, it does.
That's how I feel with movies, though. It's like I'm not a big horror movie fan, but that doesn't mean that like they should be for me just because I also want to enjoy horror movies.
I feel like this goes back to the options are always better thing that I talked about, because like where was I going with that? Talking about Kirby and how it's not for Johnny and how not every game has to be for everybody. So the guest you had on, I think it was the guest right before me. He talked a lot about how it's not his job to tell someone how to run his company, but he can say like what he would look for as a consumer.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel about this, where like I am not offended at the idea that they have chosen not to make a hard mode for Kirby or whatever game I would want a different option on. However, if they have the time to add in the option, I think that is only better for the consumer. I think both can be true. I don't think it has to be one or the other.
Well, I think for Kirby Forgotten Land, right?
Yeah.
That had difficulty settings, right? It had wild mode, and it had I forget if it was casual. I forget what it was called, but it did have wild mode, which is the hard mode, but it was still pretty easy. So like, why not crank that up a little bit? You know, just crank it up some more. What?
Wolfden, Bob Wolf used to be on the Nintendo podcast as well.
Yeah.
When he played that game, he played it to where he would not allow himself to get hit even once on a level. Like he was doing like a no-hit run. And people do, I think, things like that on other platformers as well. So I think there's also something to be said for in Dark Souls. Okay. I think there's also something to be said for creating your own difficulty sometimes, like getting a little creative.
Yeah, but I'm lazy.
Yeah. What? Well, that's a you problem.
Well, did you mention the Go Lock, right?
Yes, I did.
I forget if that was before the show or if it was on the show. I don't remember.
It was on the show.
So that I'm assuming is a Nuzlocke. I'm assuming that was a Nuzlocke. So you did make a challenge for yourself, but I think I mentioned on the last episode that I would love to have a built-in Nuzlocke that I don't have to figure out the rules myself.
Yeah. I mean, I think that would be cool. I don't think it'll ever happen. I also don't think it's like as necessary as people make it out to be. I think if more than anything, it would just be a validation thing for a lot of Pokemon players that want like a Nuzlocke mode. Like they would feel seen like as part of the community, and like it would be Game Freak acknowledging that they want something more difficult. But I also don't think that implementing the rules of a vanilla Nuzlocke, at least, some of these people get crazy, but like a regular vanilla Nuzlocke, I don't think it's too hard. The only part that's a little difficult is trying to remember which routes you've already caught a Pokemon on. So in that vein, I would love for them to add it. I think the reason they won't, there's a few reasons. One, the very name Nuzlocke is a term that can be dated back to a very specific comic strip and was created by a specific person. And even the name itself references a character from Lost. So there's like a lot of copyright things in there that they could like kind of get lost in. They could name it something else, of course.
Pokelock.
And then you guys talked about this, but the what?
The Pokelock.
Oh, well, no, Lock is the part that references the Lost character. There was a Nuzleaf named after John Locke. And that's where it gets its name.
Okay. I didn't know that. I learned something today.
There you go.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm assuming our audience knows what a Nuzlocke is, but for those that don't know, can you explain it?
Cheesy, don't have to, like, not... Listen, you don't know what a Nuzlocke is, all right? You don't know what it is. So you just want him to explain what it is.
No, I'm actually... I know what a Nuzlocke is. I'm afraid of them. And even if they were to add them in the game, sure, it would be an option for those that want to play it. But like me, I don't know if I would go near it because I don't like the idea of them. But what's a Nuzlocke?
They're not as bad as they seem if you're doing a vanilla one. I will say, though, I say that, and then, like, my thing is with my ADHD, the second I lose, like, enough of my team that I have to, like, rebuild and regrind, I'm just like, this is too much of a hassle. I'm just going to finish the game. But I did beat the Golok. That was the one. Anyway, sorry, I was not answering your original question. Nuzlocke is a challenge in Pokemon games, and there's a million variations, but like at the very core, like every Nuzlocke, like the basis of the concept is you can only catch the first Pokemon you encounter in each new area, and if a Pokemon faints, it is considered dead and can no longer be used. There's also a few rules that are not necessarily required but are incredibly common, like amongst most Nuzlocks. One of them being you have to nickname the Pokemon to form more of an emotional connection.
Yeah, see, that's what I don't like.
And then the other one being Dupe's Clause, which means that if you catch something you've already caught before, you can release it and catch something different.
Oh, okay. And a shiny clause, right? If you encounter a shiny,
some people will do shiny clause as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't name your Pokemon? What are you, a monster?
No, man, I don't.
You don't do that in the normal runs?
No,
wow.
I've never nicknamed a Pokemon.
Wow.
That's
so
why.
they're just
they're just too attached to it.
They're just nameless beasts that fight for your enjoyment.
They are not nameless. They are the
world.
The name of. They are the name of the Pokemon, and there's so many. Like, I feel like I forget the names of them, so when they pop up,
that's understandable. It's because so many of them are like drilled. Like, by the time I started nicknaming my Pokemon, I had been playing Pokemon for like, I was gonna say 20 years. It probably wasn't, but it felt like 20 years. I started playing Pokemon in 2004, so this would be 20 years. So it was like 15 years. Let's say that, right? About 15 years. And I was like obsessed with it. It was like my main game that I played for a long time. Like for a long time, unless it was multiplayer, I really just played the annual Pokemon release, and that was it for a lot of years. So all that to say, I have a lot of information on Pokemon names that I take for granted to where I only have to learn a few at a time. And if you did not have like most of the 1,000 Pokemon memorized, I can see where nicknaming them would make it harder to remember which are which.
Yeah, I mean, I like Pokemon, but I'm not a raging fan of it. Like my friend Joey, before a new game comes out, like he makes a spreadsheet of what Pokemon he might have on his team. He has a theme for the Pokemon. So I think the last one was all dessert names. And then like he goes all out, which I think is cool. Like if that's something that you truly love and you can really take the time to get excited about a new Pokemon game that's coming out,
for sure,
make it your own. That's awesome. And it's kind of like what you were saying earlier. No Less Guy made a comment that was like, a game is at its best when it plays like a classic Mario. You start off simple, and then the levels become more difficult as you go. You, as the player, fundamentally get better at the game from learning the mechanics previously used. You can be given options or power-ups and other unique items that can make levels easier, but you're still at risk of losing them. I play a lot of trading card games and board games lately. Easy entry, hard to master. These tabletop games can have story, but it's the overall mechanic that sells it because it has to be good or people will not talk and praise it, so it gets sold less. And these tabletop games can be made easier or harder with house rules, which is the best difficulty slider. Want Pokemon to be tougher? Run a Nuzlocke, or only fire-type Pokemon. Want Mario tougher? Speed run, or try to complete the level by only being able to jump 3 times. As long as the game has strong fundamentals in gaming mechanics, people will always do house rules. And that, to me, was very interesting when he mentioned that, like, Mario, for example, is a great example. It doesn't have a difficulty slider, but the further that you get into it, the harder it gets. Do you guys agree with that, or would you still like to see like a harder difficulty setting?
I should clarify, when I talk about options are always better, I don't really need the option. As long as I can play the game, I'll just play what I like, and if I don't like it, if it's too easy or too hard, which normally are not complaints I have, maybe too hard, not as much too easy, but if it is, like, I'll just play something else. But that's different than my opinion on whether or not they are a good thing for developers to add. But that I resonate with my playstyle and how I like interact with games. I resonate a lot more with that take. And I kind of want to segue into this because this is something that I didn't hear you guys talk about that I think I kind of have a unique perspective on, which is difficulties in RPGs specifically. With RPGs, some of them have difficulties, some of them don't. Pokemon is one that don't. You guys talked about that. But you really, whether you realize it or not, are sliding your own difficulty in RPGs all the time because of level up systems. I remember I made a video about video game difficulty like a while ago now. It probably was like 2 years ago. And I got a lot of comments, and it was specifically about Pokemon. And I got a lot of comments that were basically just like, well, if you think that RPGs can't be harder, like even though you can just level up like high enough to where you can beat them, then you clearly haven't played a Shin Megami Tensei or a Persona game. I have since played those games, and I'm here to tell you the same is true of them. Like within reason, there are things that they can do. They get creative, and or they can just make it to where it's such a pain to level up that you don't want to, or they can hide the boss level to where you don't know exactly where to level up to without Googling it. But largely speaking, there is no challenge that can't be overcome in an RPG by grinding, and there's no like easiness in an RPG that can't be made harder by limiting yourself. And I think that's something that I love about RPGs, because you kind of curate your own difficulty like already without having a setting, even if there is a hard mode. And granted, I didn't play the game, like I wasn't like at his PlayStation. But my friend and I both just recently played Persona 3 Reload. I played on normal, he played on hard. And it sounds like other than like, more HP or like just like more berries that make it like more tedious, we had largely the same experience, because at the end of the day, those turn-based games are programmed with a specific strategy in mind they want you to do to get past it. It's just a matter of if you have the resources to figure it out and or brute force it. But like when we talked about the battles we largely had very similar conversations about like what our thought processes were as we went through it.
Yeah, Johnny, how many RPGs do you play?
I play some of them, and I play a part of them, and then I stop playing them.
Is that
but I know he's talking, because I was playing Xenoblade Chronicles 3 recently, and yeah, you could level up your characters to just be completely overpowered for whatever area you're in. There's some RPGs that do scale, that do have level scaling. So no matter what you do, like no matter if you level up your character to like level 20, the enemies in that area are going to be level 20. So in that aspect, I don't think you can grind a way out of it, but that's more like learning the mechanics of what they need you to do.
Sure. Well, and generally in RPGs, the battles shouldn't be too difficult anyway, outside of boss battles. Like boss battles are like what you're really building to, and like those enemies in the wild areas, not to be confused with Sword and Shield's wild area, are means for grinding or just to give you something to do in the meantime. Like sometimes you might get caught off guard with something that like was like more challenging than you expected, but largely it's the boss battles.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about the conversation, because last week, I was saying that I think like, kind of what you're saying, Clockworth, is that the options are nice to have. But I also like the idea of if you can make a game that is already making it more difficult as you play. And Johnny, you kind of like came at me a little bit with me saying like games are kind of like life, or life is like games, whatever. And there are challenges, and you're saying it's a video game, it doesn't matter. But I do think that it really does help with problem solving. It helps you start to figure out what it is.
Not for everybody.
You don't think that people get like dopamine hits when they accomplish something?
You get dopamine hits. Some people might just want to zone out and play a game.
I agree with Johnny. To an extent, like for the most part, I do think that there's something to be said that if you can find a video game that has a cycle, like a gameplay cycle that really hits with you, that allows you to learn patterns or overcome something, then the dopamine hit can be really good. But one, not everybody even wants to play those types of games. And two, it's a matter of discovering those types of games. As somebody who, especially with action-based games and especially with combat-based games, I get stressed out and I don't want to overcome those. And I don't think I'll ever be found in a position where I will want to overcome those. I'm welcome to be proven wrong, but generally speaking. But when I first played Celeste, it made me realize that I don't necessarily hate difficulty. It just needs to be in a genre that I'm familiar with, and it needs to be done in a way that is not punishing, which I think Celeste does an amazing job with. And I didn't relate to that method of playing video games as much until I played Celeste.
But that's so interesting that you bring up Celeste, because that is like one of the hardest platformers.
Yeah, but
you're right. Like it's not punishing, because if you die, it just resets. And like that's kind of the whole point of that game is fail. The more you fail, the more you're going to learn, the more that you're going to be able to climb this metaphorical mountain. And physical mountain in that case. But like the story itself is like, just fail and you can keep climbing those difficult mountains in your life.
Well, I think where that's successful is because it isn't punishing, because if you die, you start like right at, like, it's only, you're only getting through one screen at a time, essentially.
Yeah.
Some of them have
that's what I loved about it, because I didn't have to go back. Like, because even in Mario, like when I was like, I think part of the reason I thought that is I think maybe the last platformer I'd played, it was last 2D platformer I had played, it was a long gap between them, was Mario 3. And at least in Mario 3, I could kind of use the save states, but I didn't allow myself to use save states anywhere other than the beginning of a level. But to like think that like if you make it all the way like right next to the flag and then you die and you have to go redo all that other stuff in succession, that can be really frustrating, especially in games where maybe you don't have save states or it's just not built that way, where if you lose, you go back like 3 levels. That can be incredibly disheartening.
Yeah.
Yeah, like save states is a good example of how they added more accessibility. I don't know if I would say make it easier, because they didn't make the game easier. They just allow you to save wherever you want it, so you didn't have to restart. Because a lot of those older games, they weren't forgiving. Like Super Mario Bros. 3, if you lose all your lives in a world, you have to redo all the levels that you already beat.
Mm-hmm. That's the conversation on its own, is save states. Is it cheating? Which I don't think it is. I use it as a tool because it's just like, I don't have time to play some of these games that maybe they were more difficult, and now they have the option to just save at a place where I'm like, okay, this feels like a good place for me to just, save and come back to. Like, I don't know. I find them helpful, but I don't know if it's cheating.
Very short answer to that. Save states cheating? No. Rewind cheating? It's a gray area, but if you're having fun, I'm not here to knock your fun.
Yeah, I mean, you're playing by yourself. Like, who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But so Nola's guy, he was on a episode of, what was that called?
11.5 minutes.
11.5 minutes, but I don't think it's called that anymore. I think it's called Quick Play.
Oh, I've listened. That was the guy that did all of the rumor people, right? He did a.
Oh, I'm not sure.
Am I crazy?
No, I'll double check, Johnny, while you're whatever it is that you're going to talk about.
But they did an episode about difficulty settings in games, and he had essentially said what he put in his comment. And the way I interpret it is get good. Like, you're telling people to get good, right? You're telling people to learn the game mechanics, which I understand, but sometimes like the enemies could have less health, or it could be something that doesn't have to do with the game mechanics. Like Dark Souls, like you're saying for Dark Souls, you just have to get good. Like that's why that community is kind of toxic, because they just tell people to get good. When in reality, you should want more people to play that series and have access to that series.
I can tell, and granted, this is one person, right? There's 8 billion people in the world, but I can tell you right now that even if Dark Souls had an easy mode, I probably wouldn't play it.
Oh, interesting.
Too spooky.
Before we get into that, I just want to say, Quick Play. You were right, Johnny. Short talks about video games, new episodes every Wednesday morning, previously known as 11.5 minutes to talk about video games. So we both were kind of right.
I think they found out that 11.5 minutes is not long enough to talk about something. Like we can talk about we talk about Community for 11.5 minutes.
Yeah, true. It's a great show. But yeah, so one of the games that they did talk about on that podcast, because I listened to that episode that No Less Guy sent us, was Cuphead. And I guess Cuphead and kind of Elden Ring kind of go into that same, not genre, but difficulty, and you're saying that even if they made an easy mode, you wouldn't play that. Would you do it with like Cuphead?
Well, I probably would try to play Cuphead even with the hard mode. Now, maybe I would get in there and it would be too difficult, and I would, at that point, not want to play it. I've never tried it. I've always wanted to. But it's just a genre thing. Like, I like platformers. I'm not big into Souls-likes or like action combat games in general. Like, there are exceptions, right? But like generally, I like platformers. I like turn-based RPGs, and then I like sim games. Like probably. I was going to say in that order, but RPGs first, then platformers, then sim games.
Do you feel like you're going to try another Crab's Treasure that's like supposed to be an easy Souls-like?
That's a Souls-like.
Probably not. Not because I don't think I might not be able to have fun with it. I think I could. It's just one of those things where there are so many video games that I reached a point where I was like, the category of game where I go, oh, that looks pretty cool. I stopped buying those games because if I'm not intending to play it like right away, I know I may not ever get around to it. And I'll buy a game I'm not intending to play if I want to just have it, but like not if I just want to try it.
So this reminds me, I caught a stray this week. I was just minding my own business, scrolling Twitter, and it was like, not everybody buys every game like Johnny does. And I'm like, wow. I'm just sitting here minding my own business.
I was just trying to cheer Cheesy up.
But it is true. It is true. I do buy too many games. I think that's something I need to work out on my own, but I don't play them as much as I should. But I did play Pepper, but I also do get to discover a ton of different games, and there's a lot of times where I play them for a bit, and if they don't resonate with me, then I stop playing them. But then there's sometimes where I find one that really resonates with me, and I love them. Like Balatro. Speaking of Mario Wonder, Balatro has more playtime on my Switch than Mario Wonder.
I feel like that doesn't take much, but that's still pretty cool.
Well, I was doing like challenge runs with Mario Wonder. I was trying to do it like.
That's true. I remember that now.
Beat it with the invisibility badge. See, I was trying to make it harder. I was trying to make it harder on my own, but they don't give you the option for a new game plus. They don't like the level's already beaten. So like, why would I want to just go back in to beat it again when I already did everything in there?
I understand why people feel that way. But like, I'm very much of the opinion, like you already beat, like even if there was a new game plus mode, like you already beat it anyway. Like the only thing that's changing is like, I guess like the convenience and how it's served up to you. But like you can go back and re-enter all the, like they don't play different because you've already beaten them. And if there was a new game plus, like you had still already beaten them, that just wouldn't have it highlighted as beaten.
Yeah, but I like the dopamine hit that I get for like, so Super Mario 3D World's a good example. There's 5 characters? Yeah, 5 characters.
I think so.
And you get a little stamp or a little like indicator of who beat that level, like what character beat that level. And to get all of the stamps, like all of the stamps, you need to beat every single level with every character.
I want you to know that at one point in time, I intended to go back and 100% that over break, and you have now changed my mind.
Yeah, don't do it. It's rough. I mean, I would say you could 100% it without the stamps. Like I would pass on doing the stamps, but try to do like Champions Road and do everything else, like the golden flagpoles and the stars, but the stamps, don't do it.
I think the only thing I'm missing is Champions Road, and then I haven't collected all of the badges. But other than that, like I've beaten all the levels and like 3-starred them all.
Yeah, I remember trying to do that on the Wii U, and like this is not worth it. But it's stuff like that isn't really, it doesn't add difficulty to it. Champions Road is probably one of the hardest levels I've ever played in my life, though. Like that.
Oh yeah, that's very difficult.
Yeah, that one's rough. In a good way. I do enjoy that level. I think it's a good one. But I don't think there's checkpoints in that level.
No, there's not. If you die, you are all the way back at the beginning.
Yeah, that one's tough. The badge challenge in Wonder is pretty tough, but it's not unbeatable.
So I'm kind of going back a little bit, but I am curious, Johnny, as not that we have your partner on the show, but you knowing your partner, I'm curious as to what you think their answer would be. Bozo was talking about difficulty and how basically there's no point in reducing it to just experiencing the world/story, because in these titles the challenge is the game. The satisfaction of refining your skills over time is lost if the game just rolls over and gives it to you for free. It's akin to turning a book that requires a high degree of reading comprehension into a children's picture book. Sure, it might convey many of the same ideas in a simplistic format, but it's a totally different experience, and the payoff for those who achieve that higher level of literacy is lost. Gaming literacy operates in much the same way. There's no shame in operating at a lower level, but game developers shouldn't be obliged or obligated to cater to that audience either.
You tell me that I compare apples to oranges?
I mean, you do.
To reading a book to playing a game? I don't think that's apples to oranges. And
I don't like that take.
What?
I just said I don't like that take. Not yours, the commenters.
Why is that, Clockworth?
So I think I mentioned that earlier. I am also a teacher. I don't teach English. My wife teaches English. I do not teach English. But you're like, Johnny said it, you're comparing apples to oranges. But like, what you're comparing something that is meant to be a relaxation or a hobby to something that is a basic life skill that you need to learn to function. And obviously, as a teacher, like I want my kids to achieve the highest critical thinking level that they can, even though they're not all going to get there. But I also focus on just making sure that they have the necessities that they need to function as like adults when they become adults. And to me, like, take the idea of being like, oh, you can't stick with the picture books of video games forever. I'm like, why not? A video game, like playing video games, is not a life functioning skill. It's a hobby. It's a relaxation technique. It's something that you do for fun. And it almost seems like you were like, and maybe I'm out of line, but it almost sounds to me like the commenter is assigning virtue to the ability to be good at something that you're doing for fun. And I don't like that.
Yeah, Johnny?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to, I know my partner, I don't know her thoughts completely, but she's a librarian, and she's really ingrained in, reading literacy, and I know, like, reading is a hobby as well. It is a hobby, but to be literate is a life skill that you need.
Right.
There are things in the literary space where people don't consider like young adult books, like an adult shouldn't read young adult books because it's not for them, and that's what I kind of think this is alluding to. But
okay, I can even go off of that. My mom was also a librarian. She would keep WWE like mini biographies in her library, and she's an elementary school librarian, so it is a little different. But she would do that because she would know that those were the only books that some kids would read, and that getting them to read something was better than getting them to read nothing. On a similar aspect, not a personal connection, but my literary studies professor in college had us watch a movie, had us read a comic book. I think there was some other examples, because he knew that we may leave that literary studies class and never read another novel again if we just weren't like compelled or attracted to it. But we could take the higher order critical thinking skills we learned from interacting with those mediums and apply them to other areas of life. So I just, like, even with reading like as enjoyment, I don't think there's any virtue in reading something that requires like a higher order thinking if you're reading something you enjoy, if you are able to provide for your family, and if you are a decent, caring human person.
Yeah, and to just finish what they said with that comment is By the same token, I won't stand for games like Princess Peach Showtime or Kirby getting dunked on for being too simple. They deserve to exist as strictly breezy experiences just as much as God Hand or Cuphead. I don't know what God Hand is. Do you guys?
It's probably God of War.
Oh, God of War. All right.
Maybe. I don't know.
Deserve to exist as uncompromising gauntlets of difficulty. Not every game needs to be tailored to everyone's taste, and that's perfectly fine. There's room for all of them. Accessibility options, however, ought to be in every game, but that's a completely separate discussion than difficulty.
I retract my statement. I feel like a bad person. Because he did kind of soften it near the. I didn't realize it wasn't done. I'm sorry to whoever that was.
No, you're
sorry,
all good.
bozo.
I mean, it came from bozo. I just for the record, bozo is just such a great word. I love that word. But I mean, I don't think what you said. Like, I don't know if you need to retract your statement. Like, what you said is true.
That's true. I don't like the vigor with which I said it, because I feel like I was coming off like offended and kind of taking it out on the commenter in a respectful way. But knowing that there was more nuance to the rest of their thought, I feel like that they did not merit like me kind of laying into them.
No, I mean, I
do not apologize. I do not take any statements back ever. If you don't like what I had to say, deal with it.
Well, let's talk about that, Johnny.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Because
I was wrong.
Yeah, you've been playing Skyward Sword, and you've had a lot to say about Skyward Sword in the past. But
Mitchell, have you played Skyward Sword?
No. So something about me, like, and I already kind of alluded to the fact that I used to mostly only play Pokemon up until, like, honestly, the Switch. There are exceptions, but in that same vein, the only two Legend of Zelda games that I have beaten are Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. I've played other ones. That's all you need to play. Ones. Fair enough.
No, I mean, so yeah, my thoughts on Skyward Sword have been very vocal over the past years. And I hated the controls, and it just made me hate that game so much. But I've been playing it, and it's honestly, it's good. It's good. I would not even say that it's okay. It is a good game, and I should have known. It's made by Nintendo. Like, Nintendo doesn't make bad games. All right, they don't make bad games. 1-2 Switch is a good game. All right, I will have no 1-2 Switch slander on this show.
I mean, how many mini games are there in 1-2 Switch? Like 20 or something, and maybe 3 of them are worth it.
Hey, those 3 make it good.
It just makes it worth the $50.
But the music is fantastic. The temple design is great. So Mitchell, you've never played a Zelda with traditional temples.
So I've played most of Link Between Worlds and a decent portion of Link to the Past. But as far as 3D Zelda goes, you're correct. I think I made it to the first dungeon in Twilight Princess when I was in high school, and I borrowed like it from a friend, but I did not even finish the first dungeon.
Did you like Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild?
Oh, absolutely. Breath of the Wild, I think I was a little bit more tepid on than other people, not because it wasn't fantastic, but because I didn't play it when it came out. So I feel like I didn't get to really catch that wave of momentum. But because of that, Tears of the Kingdom is one of my absolute favorite games. And I recognize that it couldn't be there without. I'm not trying to dog on Breath of the Wild. I'm just saying that I left Breath of the Wild going, man, that was really, really good. I had a lot of fun. And I left Tears of the Kingdom going I absolutely freaking love this game.
No, that's understandable. Yeah. I will never fight. I will not fight anybody on that. If anybody thinks it's less than a 10 out of 10, I'll fight them on that. But other than that, no. But I would. So if you enjoyed those games, I would highly recommend you check out an older 3D Zelda game.
I will probably get around
if you're able to. So, Skyward Sword's on the Switch. I wanted to start there. I would do if they ever bring Wind Waker to the Switch.
That's phenomenal. The one I'm most interested in for what it's worth. Just from its presentation. Twilight
Princess is great. Ocarina of Time is, classic. You don't have any urge for Ocarina of Time?
I'm gonna get you guys in trouble. You can put this one on a clip
No, I
and
don't
get you in
care.
trouble. I probably have not actually played enough of Ocarina of Time to like have a final
Which
like,
version did you
decision
play?
on it.
Which version did you play?
The N64 one
Okay.
on NSO mostly. But every time I boot up that game, I'm just like, and to be fair, I don't even think I made it out of Kakariko Village, but I'm just like running around and I'm like, who do I talk to? Where do I go? Then I got in that forest and I just kept getting lost. And I'm just like,
That was the whole point of that
how is
forest.
this better than Mario 64? Why do people say this is better than Mario 64? And then I just get like a little bit, like indignant about it because everyone tells me it's like so amazing, and that just makes me like never want to give it like a proper chance. But I will get around to giving it a chance eventually, I'm sure. If I live long enough, I'm gonna have to play it sooner or later.
Yeah, so now that I've been playing Skyward Sword and enjoying it, I'm gonna, once I get through it, I'm gonna go back and revisit Majora's Mask, because that's another one that I do not like.
And once again, I have not played either. I'm just completely going off vibes here and like first impressions. But I will say the little bit I played of Majora's Mask on NSO, I was vibing with it more than Ocarina of Time, like off the jump at least. But like I didn't really get into the meat and bones of either of them, so I'm really just like talking out of my butt.
It's just the time constraint that stresses me out.
I'm with you. Like I feel like I still need to play more of Ocarina of Time because my first introduction.
You haven't beat it either?
I've never beat it. No.
Oh my god! I'm revoking the gamer card again.
No. 1 second. Don't let him make you play another game until he plays Final Fantasy VII Remake, because we made a pact.
Wait, what?
I kept my end of the bargain.
Oh shoot! We did make a pact. I forgot about that. Was that supposed to be last year? Was that last year?
I think so. Yeah. It was either last year or the year before.
I was supposed to beat Final Fantasy VII Remake by the end of one of the years, either last year or the year before. I own it. I have like the integrate or whatever.
I don't actually care that much because like if you're not having fun with it, I don't actually care. Like I finished.
I don't think I even started it though.
Even though I was like kind of like, it was like, oh, that's pretty good. I am glad that I played it because I think I'm gonna start getting more into Rebirth, and now I have like that background. But sorry,
now, don't give him the idea that he can make me play games. It's only I can make him play games.
No, that doesn't sound fair. No, so like I was playing the 3DS version, and from what I remember, I liked it. Navi though, oh my god, I wanted to kill that fairy. Like it's one of those things where it kind of stopped me from playing, and the more I think about it, maybe that is the reason I stopped playing. And I had the volume on, and so my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, like, hey, listen, is still triggering to her to this day. And sometimes I like to listen to Nintendo voice chat, and that's how they would like start their show, is the hey, listen. And so I don't know, like I do want to go back and play Ocarina of Time. Supposed to be a great Zelda. I've never played Majora's Mask. So
it's like one of the greatest games ever made. Not just Zelda. It's one of the great. Actually, I think it is the highest rated game ever.
But I would play it on my 3DS, right? Because the NSO version is not. It's not great.
Talking about Navi, my friend Ian, he actually runs a gaming blog. Shout out to Adventure Rules. But the entire 15 years I've known him, hey, listen has been his text alert, and he is not one of those people that keeps his phone on silent. So you probably shouldn't hang out with him if you got PTSD from Navi.
But he just rebranded, didn't he?
Yes and no. He was going to. I don't know the full ins and outs of what happened. I know he was going to leave WordPress, and I think that had something to do with a like an ethical concern. But I think he figured out, like, as he was looking into other platforms, that there wasn't really like a good alternative that didn't also raise similar concerns. I may be completely off on that, but I know basically whatever he looked into, he decided better the devil you know than the devil you don't. So he ended up sticking to the one that he's had for a while, but he has continued the event that was supposed to be like his final event for that page.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, like you said earlier, we have gone on some tangents, but that's the show. I don't really care if we stay on topic or not.
We need more comments. People need to leave more comments. Join the Discord. Leave reviews
on just anything or what?
Yeah, on anything. I don't care.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, this is a discussion. We have no control over what happens in the gaming industry. It's just us bozos, if you will, talking about how we feel. And there's not a wrong or right answer, but I just love having these in-deep conversations of what others may be thinking about on, I guess, this topic.
Also, I just realized I probably aged us too much. I said 15 years. That would mean that I was 15. I was not 15 when I met him. I was 18. So like 12 years.
Johnny, I see you thinking. What are you thinking?
I don't want to say how old I was 15 years ago. I couldn't drink yet, so that's
the plus.
I could vote. Actually, no, I could drink. Yep, I could.
I was gonna say, wait, I'm doing the math in my head, and I was able to drink.
I used to be ashamed. I don't know what. I'm 36. Like, it's not that big of a deal.
Accountant.
Who cares? Who cares? Age is just. Oh wait, I don't want to say that because that's messed up. But I don't feel 36. I don't feel 36 at all.
There you go.
So we are. So here's our existential crisis.
I'm 30 and I feel 45. So
Here's the existential crisis portion of the show that we usually get into. So I watched a TikTok and I told Kelsey about this, and it was a guy. He's like, it's weird being in your 30s and your friends are like high-powered individuals in their companies. Like, I know this guy, he's a director of accounting, and he doesn't even know how to Venmo me money. Like, how... And I'm like, wow, that's true. Like, I actually manage people. That's scary. I'm managing these young, impressionable minds.
It's like that How I Met Your Mother meme of that guy's a dad. I don't know if you guys watched that show.
I used to love How I Met Your Mother.
Basically, it just shows like flashbacks of their friends doing really dumb stuff in their 20s and then says, I can't believe that guy's a dad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's how it feels now. Like, now we're old enough that people have kids, like, and they've had. Well, I'm old enough to have where people have had kids for like 15 years, and their kids are driving now. Like, that's scary.
In theory, that same friend, I don't think I will. I think he'll go to a different high school. But I, in theory, could have his kid in high school in like 5 years. So that's weird. That's the oldest kid that a friend of mine has. Is I think he's like 9.
And
our friend of the show, Daft Husky, made a TikTok that was like, "Oh man, do you guys remember like playing games in split screen?" And it's like talking to someone younger, and they're like, "What's split screen?"
They still have split screen.
Yeah, there's still split screen,
but not as much as there used to be.
They're lying. They're a bunch of liars.
I can at least say that my freshmen know what split screen is because they were trying to get me to bring Fortnite in for video game club, and I was like, we need to play something with split screen, and they're like, some versions of it have split screen. I'm like, not the version that we would have to play in the school building.
Mm-hmm. Mario Kart has split screen.
Yeah, Mario Kart and Mario Party. Yeah. Like, those are really the only ones I can think of.
You need to stop being a Nintendo fanboy. That's what you need to do.
You need to just shut your mouth. You're the same as me.
Yeah, we're getting off track. We're over an hour. That's what usually happens. But Mitchell, ClockworthClone, thank you for joining us. Let the people know where they can find you.
You can find me at Twitter and on TikTok. I think that's really it. I don't have Instagram. Please don't find me on Facebook. That's like a different vibe. And it's at ClockworthClone on both of those platforms.
Johnny, where can people find you?
I'm Johnny Bo everywhere. Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. I do have a Facebook page, but all it is reposting reels. So you could, like, whenever you post a reel, you could just say send to Facebook. I have like almost 100 followers on Facebook.
There you go.
But yeah, you can follow me on Facebook. But I will be coming back to streaming in like a week, hopefully.
Oh, that's exciting.
I'm hoping. We'll see if I'm
motivated. I think I've got my Prime sub. I'll save it.
I don't know where I'm going to stream. Maybe I'll stream on Twitch just so you can use your Prime sub on me.
Watch me say that, and it's actually not up yet, but I think it's up.
Yeah, I don't know where I'm going to stream first. Yet. What
game are you going to stream first?
Skyward Sword.
Really?
No, I don't know. I don't know yet.
Oh, okay.
I have to think about it.
Right.
Belachro.
Yeah, probably. You can find me on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Nintendo Powercast, CheezyC64, CheezyC64. Clockworth, you got any closing words for us?
Play the games that you like and don't bother other people who are trying to do the same thing.